Okay, so I sort of have to record this via video because I just the amount of thoughts you're making me generate won't fit into like any number of a reasonable amount of posts. Like I would have to make like 20 posts. At that point, that's almost like a thread, and I despise threads. So instead, I'm just gonna ramble for like maybe 10 minutes, and nobody will watch it, right? But I get to feel good about myself. So, thread starts off. I don't really care. It's just as soon as it gets to SpaceX. Okay, good. We go on SpaceX. This is the part I care about. Uh, yeah, Tesla, SpaceX is actually probably the biggest aspect of Musk now. Like Tesla really isn't all that unique now. Like there's EV manufacturers are picking up BYD and whoever in China are going to like probably produce the default electric vehicle of the future or something. I don't know. I don't follow Tesla, but it's good. That market is satisfied. We're going to have good EVs now. SpaceX still stands out as like by like a mile in regards to their own domain. Their handle on launch and then satellite manufacturing and broadband internet, they're like miles ahead of anyone else, right? We need to stop we need to start petitions European governments to stop using SpaceX. Okay, yeah. You don't really need to start petitioning. They don't want to use SpaceX. They love because that's on a principle level. They don't care if it's SpaceX or Euro or whoever else. They don't want to send money from Europe over to the US for their services. They would much rather fund their own industry. And the reason why they have to buy like uh, Falcon 9 launches instead of Ariane 6 ones is just because Ariane 6 isn't available. And that's not from a lack of trying from them. As mentioned down further, Ariane Space have received $4.4 billion for Ariane 6 development, and it's still like 5 years behind schedule. Or no, okay, more like 3 or 4, but still pretty bad. And then for Starlink, they've already got their own systems. They're working through OneWeb. They'll be able to get that to an extent. I mean, they've obviously given up on like Starshield. Italy was looking at spending like 1.6 billion, which hurts my soul, but because Starshield is really cracked, like it's really good. But obviously you don't want to rely on a company whose CEO kind of hates your country. Like Musk kind of hates UFA. That isn't like AFG. Uh, so then you get to this point, like SpaceX saves money. Yes, they do. It's not as much like Falcon 9 internal pricing and transporter pricing are like significantly cheaper. Like their current 70 million for commercial launch and then like probably like a 90 million or 100 million for government launch for Falcon 9. That is not at that's with margin. Like that's with pay margin. That's just because they don't feel competitive pressure to push the price down. Like that's what they were pricing in the 2014 before they had figured it out years, right? So they're taking significant margin there. Still though, it's about as cheap as it's ever been. It's very reliable. It's very capable. Falcon 9 does a good job. Governments are happy with it, and it's sort of that even that base level of competition is still forcing like companies like RM Space and ULA to perform at a higher level, which is then still benefiting the taxpayer or the governments when they launch because that means they have to be competitive with SpaceX. So it sort of sets a minimum standard, their pricing and their standard, which is good because that means that no matter who launches, we're in a better space for it. Now, 10x the price, 1/10 capability? Nah, not really. It's like SpaceX can be like 20 to 30% cheaper if they're feeling good, or it depends on the contract, right? Because like you looked to Starship HLS, and maybe that never works out, but if it did, like the government equivalent of that would be a $10 billion program for lander with like, yeah, 1/10 the capability would be that case, right? And now they're getting two HLS landers out with Blue Moon and with Starship HLS. Okay, this is all tangent, but yeah, it depends on. It's not ever going to be this good, but it can get close. Like Starshield End of Road, that's correct. That's really good. Like they're getting 100 satellites for like $2.5 billion. Really good value. Would you wait? Boeing Starliner, I don't know. My opinion on Starliner is that it's surprising that it's still screwing up. Like it's like 11 years on now from development. Boeing really kicked the bucket somehow. Yeah, I don't know. There's something to be said there. I was. Okay, now we get to like where I enter this phrase. I was a SpaceX enthusiast like you. I like the arrows though, man. It's a fun way of phrasing things. I don't know why you do it, but I'll give you that. Now, yes, the flights are cheaper if you don't factor in government subsidies. Okay. No, they don't receive government subsidies which make their launches cheaper. They have a large government market that they have, um, which basically allows them to price lower. That's at least what Ariane Space would argue. So if we search it up, Ariane Space complains about SpaceX government market. That okay, well, oh yeah, here we go. Sounds about right. Which is a weird. That's a weird link. I'm not sure I trust that. Eh, wow. This is just like what I do for fun. Okay, well, this is complaining about Ariane space subsidies. Well, okay, it's there somewhere. I'll try spacenews.com. Okay, yeah, here we are. Sorry. Okay, it took me about a minute, but we finally got to the link. This is how I find sources, by the way. Government market support. Yeah, so basically, the argument they make is that the government market that SpaceX has access to allows them to price cheaper for their commercial launches because basically that's handling all their sort of overhead. And that's an argument I can support you making. They do receive, I don't know, obviously you got your DoD launches and then you've got your commercial crew and cargo launches, and that eats up a significant chunk of revenue and provides a lot of engineering support from NASA and DoD to like design their vehicles and keep it reliable. But again, Ariane Space, they receive their fair share of also European launches and their 300 million annual subsidy for just being existing as a European launcher. And whereas SpaceX, all those contracts come with the asterisk that they have to be providing services. Now, SpaceX, despite what I may imply, does receive subsidies. I'm not going to argue that. Like they've received basically a bunch of these small fry, like you get these sort of state grants where it's like a lot of discounts where they're like, hey, come work here and we'll give you 50 million off. Grok talks a bit more about it. Oh, I said Grok. Oh God. And no, yeah, like so Texas development incentives, right? They've received that from California, from Texas, from whoever else. There was this one, it was cancelled, so I'm glad you didn't bring it up because I would. But yeah, like they do receive subsidies, but these are like averaging out like 20, 30 million maybe a year, if that. Probably more like averaging down to 10 across the entire program. That's nothing compared to like the $3, $4 billion a year it takes to run SpaceX. And so the only big one was this Amos 6 one, which is just utterly hilarious for a lot of reasons. But yeah, so the Israeli company received, I think, a below interest rate loan from the US government so they could buy a SpaceX launch. Uh, 98 million is actually a lot when you think about it because it's supposed to be like, 60, 70 million for a launch pad. I guess it was GTO. Oh, and then it exploded. ML6 baby. But like, yeah, it did have an interest rate. Anyway, so yeah, why did I say that? Why did I ask you to name one subsidy? Well, me being me, I didn't believe you'd be able to. I know the subsidies exist. I just didn't think you'd be able to name them because generally the claim that SpaceX exists because of subsidies is incorrect. They exist, oh, SpaceX is competitive because of subsidies. It's just factually incorrect not my opinion. I think it's just incorrect, right? And they're competitive because of government contracts and sub services, and also just because they're correct. Like the development pricing and all that sort of stuff. Trust me, you can't be launching 100 times a year at the rate that they do, and with Starlink and all, they're good. They're good. If you want to make the argument that government marketing is the reason why they're competitive, I can accept that. Government subsidies, no. So when I see someone say, okay, they received a subsidy, that's why they're competitive, I don't believe they're able to name them. So I ask you, and I'll say a little bit about Stoke. Love you, Stoke. So CC chat. I disagree. Basically, development contracts might actually be worse than subsidies because it's like you just provide money to develop a capability rather than sustain it. No, because it does come with deliverables. It's not you have to develop the capability rather than just say, okay, I'm better for it. Thank you for making me able to price cheaper. So yeah, like I don't count those ones. And this phrasing, milestone-based R&D subsidy, according to the file rule. I have not been able to find this anywhere. I know how to search for government filings and documents. I've looked for this phrase, and that's where I thought it's weird because you've said it in a particular this phrasing, right? Where does it come from? I don't know. Why wouldn't I know? Like I should be able to find this. And this is where my suspicions began to arise. But okay, yeah, CCDev, government development contract. It actually did have deliverables as discussed. You look at the contract here. If you scroll down like a couple 20 pages, yeah, you can see some of the milestones here. Static file testing, a long list of like what they have to do. Draft crew requirements, and you have the specific actual costs received for like achieving milestones. What do you mean they don't have deliverables? That's just completely false. Yeah, and then we get to our actual subsidy. They received 17.3 million from Texas for their Bassford plant. I can search it up. Um, right, and it's like, yeah, that's a genuine subsidy, but again, they've invested $280 million into that facility. Um, like, or well, okay, if it's probably more than like 253 million. 250, no, yeah, 252.7 million dollars by SpaceX. Like that's a fraction. That's like 7%, or actually more like 8%. Anyway, yeah, so they've received a subsidy. I don't think it's the reason why they're competitive. This is the AMOS 6 one. I mean, that was not zero interest. Where did you get zero interest from? I think it's the AI, right? Again, development contract, and actually now a services contract. So like the majority of that funding was, yeah, 1.3 billion of that funding was just for launches. Oh well, if it was 6 flights, that'd be 1.2. So 1.4 billion. 1.4 is in development, 1.2 is in services. Like, uh, don't. I guess can't. Now, so I ask you to provide you a link for the CCI, the phrasing, and you give me this one. And it's like I've read this. I'd actually read this before you would send it to me, but then we look at the source: AI chat.gpt.com. You've asked GPT or ChatGPT to find the source for you, but read through the document. Well, you can't actually control F it, unfortunately, but you read through it and it's like there is no mention of the phrasing subsidy. Where have you got the subsidy phrasing from? And then I think about it a bit. It's like you've got one source from GTP, ChatGPT, and you probably haven't read the filing because otherwise you'll be able to link that. So that's where I start to think, ah, shit. Now, I will say, my initial reaction to this was like, holy shit, by the way, you have game. Anyone bringing up like the Israeli uh loan, I don't even think about that. I'd forgotten about it. Um, yeah, so I was incredibly impressed with you, by the way. Don't you like? I was like, holy shit, this guy's got game. Game meets game. Because when it comes to the internet, I don't really want to win. I want to like lose. Oh, maybe not lose, but I want to grow and change. And this forced me to grow and change. I had to look up like some really obscure documents to find out that it wasn't actually zero interest loan. It was like a 2.73. And I had to find the subsidies at website. And I also found this amazing, this one. Yeah, like this has all of the fuck is. Oh, what? Oh, I probably no. Where's my link? Okay, I just one sec, one sec. That shouldn't be giving me 404. Where's my link? I swear to God, I will murder someone if it's disappeared. This is literally my favorite link ever. Oh, okay, good. Sorry. Sorry, I messed up. Can I edit? Uh, Edit. Ah, shit. That's on me. For some reason it didn't copy across the essentials part. Okay, anyway. I'm just gonna T, this is the process of discovery. I'm just gonna delete this one. Delete. It's not gonna work properly, but now it's just, you know what? I'm just gonna, can I change the two from? Yeah, okay, this is like the things you learn, eh? So yeah, okay, sorry, getting distracted here. I just want to, yeah. Anyway, so yeah, I see that the fact that you've posted a bunch of interesting, you made some interesting arguments. I might not agree with them, but like you brought up some interesting facts. You've brought up stuff I've forgotten about. No, 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 no. Where, what did you do? Why did I hear a do to do? Well, yeah, should be fine. Anyway, yeah. So you say, okay, losing my train of thought, relax, recover. I'm a capable human being, and so are you. Um, I think to myself, okay, you're like a little bit of a high level individual, but now I'm thinking to myself, you got this from ChatGPT because there's a lot of mistakes here that are sort of like I can attribute to human, but like zero interest loan, that sounds like an AI guessing or just hallucinating. Calling it a milestone-based R&D subsidy, again, that sounds like a hallucination by a lot. No deliverables, hallucination. And so, I don't want to talk to an AI unless I know I'm talking to one, right? I don't mind spitballing against them because, AI pretty good at bringing together resources and doing a lot of things like that. But yeah, I don't like, you know, being fooled into having an argument with one without knowing I am. Europe should invest in their own capabilities. Okay, yeah, I agree. Countries should invest in their own capabilities if they're interested in their own sovereignty and defense. And they have been. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, the only reason that they aren't, well, they've been essentially funding European capabilities. It's just that they haven't come up to scratch, and SpaceX has been there to provide those services. Uh, SpaceX monopoly, sorta, but like again, it's the accidental monopoly, and in all the industries that they're currently monopolies in, there are new providers in coming in the next year. Like launch is currently like SpaceX, but then in a year's time you're gonna have Blue Origin, ULA, Rocket Lab, Stoke Space, maybe Firefly, and they're all gonna have vehicles. And the idea that SpaceX is only the one able to provide medium lift and heavy lift capability is just frivolous. In Starship, you're gonna see Kuiper start to come online, although you know the concerning thing here with SpaceX is not so much their individual dominance of any market, it's the fact that as a vertically integrated company, the pricing overall is so competitive. So, like for Starlink, they've got internal Falcon 9 pricing, which is like $15 million per launch, or maybe like 20, which compared to like that's like crazy. That's a is it $1,000 a kilogram? Oh yeah, yeah, it's $1,000 per kilogram. Um, Cheapest you're gonna get on ULA or like New Glenn is like 2,000, 3,000. You combine that with their incredible Starlink manufacturing line, Hype is really going to have a hard time not being competitive with that pricing. And same with OneWeb and whoever. That's the concerning part to me, where they have the dominance over the satellite market. But even then, there's still sovereign interest. Like they're not going to achieve monopoly status, and like concerned about. Look, I'll be a lot more concerned about supply chain disruptions with other companies because they're much more vulnerable because they have so much but much more distributed supply chains. Like that was a whole problem with ULA. Like if you go back to the ROD 180, the fact that they're relying on Russia for their engine meant that they were vulnerable to like sovereign pressure during Ukraine. SpaceX still has like supply chain challenges, like particular materials, like whatever they make out of the engine. Let's look at ptailpool.com. What's the engine? Neobium, right? No, like I think this one. Yeah, yeah. So like that's actually a pretty supply train constrained material. Like the reason why they started developing short nozzles is because neobium does have a shortage worldwide, and it's kind of we can't manufacture a lot of it. So that's where we got the short nozzle mill back from. Which is oh my God, 300 landing was peak. But yeah, like the reason why US has like so many lines of development that SpaceX is only a temporary accidental monopoly because everyone just transitioned at the wrong time and they've sort of rigged in the contract as a result. Um, SpaceX will succeed, I guess. Wow, I've had a lot to say. Not much more thoughts. So yeah, again, the reason why SpaceX is a temporary accidental monopoly. Um, in future, the US will have like a robust market, although SpaceX will still probably stand above them as really competitive with Starlink, Starship, and Falcon. Um, and that's concerning in its own right because it might throttle new incumbents. But then again, Transporter is the new incumbent sort of generator, right? You look at these fucking the pricing on this thing and like the reliability, the access to space, like all new companies, all the seed stock for the future space economy is going through Transporter with SpaceX. Like these launches are incredible. I know for small sat. Like, oh god damn it, I spelled small sat. Eh. There's some people argue that Transporter is bad for the market because it it's certainly probably killed off a couple. I wouldn't say killed off. most of the launch companies, small launch companies that failed because they ran out of money before their vehicles could get reliably launching. And you might argue that, well, that's because they couldn't raise additional funding because SpaceX reduced the market for them. And there's an argument there. Like at the end of the day, if the solution is not competitive, like people aren't arguing that you know, fax machines are like we're losing fax machines and that's a terrible thing because we create the email. New technologies are going to rule out old ones, and small, large, or medium-lift launch vehicles having rideshare launches, like reusable launch vehicles, rideshare missions, are killing off small launch vehicle dedicated missions, is not monopoly. It's an entirely different technical solution, even though it might not seem like that. And so, yeah, if it kills it off, it's just a natural evolution of the market rather than, SpaceX preventing new entrants. Because all of those new entrants, like Firefly, okay, Firefly was able to develop MLV. Rocket Lab has gone on to Neutron. Virgin Orbit was bad and failed out, I guess, and so did ABL. But Relativity was able to go into Terranar. Like it hasn't prevented 3 out of the 5 like small launch companies from developing larger vehicles. And then we still see new entrants like Stoic Space able to develop a like pretty robust and raise up like 500 billion or $500 million worth of funding after Relativity burned through like $1 billion. Like, you know, the launch space is still in the ability to raise capital, and that's fine. Yeah, okay. I think I'll just stop there, right? I've been talking a lot. Yeah, this is sort of how I have to approach this because I've got so many thoughts, so many arguments I want to say, but then yeah, it doesn't work out. Anyway.